The cruelest twist? The first man who truly treated her right was an actual mafia boss. Jessica came to that wedding expecting embarrassment. Her family treated her like a failure. Her ex-husband mocked her to her face. Then suddenly this impossibly calm, gorgeous man steps in, dances with her, defends her, and makes the entire room regret underestimating her. For 1 second it feels like karma finally showed up. But then the script goes nuclear. Because he is not some rich gentleman with good timing. He is mafia. Real mafia. And thanks to one fake romance at one wedding, Jessica and her daughter get dragged into a war neither of them saw coming.
Sophia, the subject's sister, presented in white lace, a case study in the flawless optimism of a 23-year-old. From her designated position at Table 12, a locale for social afterthoughts, Jessica observed this ritual of traditional success. Her proximity to the kitchen doors, a hub of chaotic service, underscored her socioeconomic distance from the champagne being deployed. The Grand Marquis Ballroom, an architecture of crystal and stone, framed a skyline that broadcasted inherited power. An anomalous event registered security personnel converging at reception. 3 hours post-separation from her daughter, the intrusive image of the 5-year-old's melancholic expression persisted. The child, Lily, had exhibited a strong desire to participate, to wear her second-hand burgundy dress and witness the matrimonial ceremony. A peer, Camilla, had provided a rational counter-argument: the volatility of combining high-stress social events with young children. Lily's placement at home was framed as a protective measure against the familial judgment already being directed at Jessica. This social verdict was rendered at 7:30 upon her arrival without a male partner, a 28-year-old single mother in attire 2 seasons past its relevance. Her cousin Vanessa presented her 7-month gestation in a designer gown, a clear display of socially validated achievement. Vanessa's spouse, also the subject's former partner, offered a nod of such brevity it bordered on a hallucination. This was Tyler, the individual who ceased contact upon her pregnancy disclosure, subsequently marrying her affluent cousin 6 months later in an act of complete historical revisionism. Jessica's life, in contrast, consisted of 12-hour shifts at Lurie Children's Hospital, managing her daughter's inquiries about a paternal figure and calculating the overtime required for rent. "Jessica, dear, you came alone." The maternal inquiry was a precise blend of feigned concern and authentic disappointment. She materialized at the table, her husband in her wake, his expression a portrait of weary resignation to his daughter's perceived life trajectory failures. "We hypothesized you'd have a date. The Martinelli family is present. Their sons are optimal prospects, controlling that restaurant conglomerate." "I'm fine, Mom," Jessica articulated, her smile a fragile construct threatening to splinter. Lily conveys her congratulations to Sophia. "Ah, yes, the child." The deliberate depersonalization of a 5-year-old registered as a targeted verbal strike. "Camilla is with her. It's unfortunate you cannot procure a professional nanny." They disengaged without awaiting a response, moving toward guests of higher social capital. They integrated with the clan's highest functioning members: her sister Lauren, wife to a surgeon, cousins who brandished postgraduate degrees and robust investment portfolios. Then there was Jessica, the pediatric nurse, a case of arrested medical ambition, who had exchanged a physician's coat for single motherhood in a 1-bedroom apartment. Her thumb maintained pressure on 911, keeping a line active for tracing. Giovanni had issued a directive to delay a formal report until the retaliatory syndicate was identified. The 7-course meal was a sequence of gustatory stimuli she was physiologically unable to process. The adjacent couple discussed a skiing excursion to Aspen, A female across the table displayed a diamond valued at more than Jessica's semi-annual income. She manufactured a smile, a performance of polite engagement while contemplating the latency period before her absence would be noted. The first dance commenced. Sophia and her new husband exhibited a weightless quality. Her parents followed, a tableau of vicarious success. Lauren and her partner joined. The floor became a constellation of pair-bonded units. Outside, the Chicago nightscape had turned to obsidian. A storm, unpredicted by meteorology, was developing its own narrative. A low-frequency vibration, a sub-audible tremor began to emanate from the ballroom floor. Rain cascaded down the glass partitions, rendering the city lights into a weeping abstraction. "May I have this dance?" The voice was Tyler's. It induced an acute somatic response, a sudden tensing of all major muscle groups. She pivoted to find him unaccompanied. "No, thank you." Her tone was clinical, a defense mechanism imported from her professional environment. "Come on, Jess, for old times." He deployed a regressive charm tactic that had lost its efficacy. "Let's be adults here." "We are functioning as adults, and my response remains negative." She directed her gaze to the dance floor, a nonverbal cue of dismissal. He remained stationary. "This outcome is not necessary. I concede that, but—" "Tyler." She rose, the fragile shell of her composure finally fracturing. "Return to your pregnant wife. Dance with her, and remove yourself from my proximity." "My pregnant wife," he countered, the charm curdling into caustic aggression, "is gestating my heir, not the error in judgment that terminated your medical career." The impulse to strike him was strong. Instead, she maintained perfect stillness as he retreated to Vanessa. From across the room, Vanessa's gaze met hers in a lock. A possessive hand rested on her abdomen. She produced a minute, devastating smile that communicated a single concept: victory. As the music shifted, the floor repopulated with diedes, their kinetic harmony a cruel counterpoint to the subject's internal state of chaos. She collapsed into her chair at table 12, resisting the urge to psychologically disintegrate before 200 observers. It was then she registered his presence. He stood by the bar, detached from the collective, but its clear center of gravity. He was tall, approximately 6'3", with a physique indicative of extreme discipline. The black suit was immaculate, but his facial structure arrested her attention. Pronounced zygomatic arches, a mandible of granitic solidity, and eyes that, even at a distance, seemed to bypass her psychological defenses. He was observing her. The gaze was not cursory, it was a methodical evaluation, a focus so intense it felt transgressive, yet it elicited a novel physiological jolt. She broke contact first, a vasomotor response flooding her cheeks with heat. Upon a second, cautious glance, he was conversing with the elder Martinelli. A brief verbal exchange occurred, then the stranger began to move with unnerving intentionality, bisecting the crowd on a direct vector toward her. Her primary impulse was flight, to fabricate a pretext involving her daughter and egress. Yet some force held her immobilized at table 12 as he traversed the room with the unhesitating certainty of a man for whom refusal is not a known outcome. He halted at her table, his presence exerting a physical pressure. The eyes, so piercing from afar, were revealed to be a warm light brown, amber with an internal luminescence. A fine cicatrix bisected his chin, a flaw that magnified his intensity. His scent was of cedar and an unidentifiable dark spice. "You have remained in isolation all evening," he noted, his voice colored by a classic Italian cinematic accent. It registers to me as a significant waste. I'm fine, she articulated, her heart rate accelerating against her rib cage. But thank you. No, he countered. My assessment is that you are not. He occupied the adjacent empty seat without seeking permission, a single fluid motion. My assessment is that you are experiencing profound pain and you are expending considerable energy to mask it. The startling accuracy of his diagnosis caused a momentary cessation of breath. You have no data about me. I have the data that you are the sole unpartnered individual at a kinship gathering. The man who just left you induced a desire for invisibility, and you have checked your phone at 15-minute intervals, planning an exit strategy. The corner of his mouth shifted into a shape that was not a smile. Is my analysis incorrect? You're observant. She placed her phone on the table, suddenly perceiving her own manifest misery through his analytical lens. Are you an associate of the bride or groom? Neither. Business with the Martinellis, I surmise. He inclined his head toward the family. They were my point of entry. Giovanni Fioraldi. He extended his hand. The haptic feedback was firm and warm, a nonverbal communication of strength. Jessica Reed. Jessica, he repeated, testing the name's phonetics. The bride's sister, the one who arrived unaccompanied. In certain circles, such data disseminates rapidly. He retracted his hand, yet his presence seemed to stabilize her in the disorienting environment. He reduced the interpersonal distance. Jessica Reed, I have a proposition for you. A rational part of her psyche urged a retreat to her predictable, low-threat existence. But a competing internal voice inquired, what kind of proposition? Giovanni moved closer, his voice a low-frequency confidence beneath the ambient noise. Dance with me. Assume the role of my wife for the remainder of the night. Demonstrate to this room that you are not isolated. The proposal was audacious, a simulated marriage. Why not? He stated, his logic brutally efficient. It resolves variables for us both. His face was a mask, but his amber eyes betrayed a feral flicker. His proposition was articulated with surgical precision. My family system has a requirement for a wife. Yours, it appears, prefers you in a state of solitude. We represent for each other a convenient truth. A normative psyche would have rejected the brutal calculus of his offer. Consider it from this perspective, he murmured, rising to his full stature and offering his hand once more. The orchestra is playing and your former partner is observing. It is time for the performance to commence. A negative response was the only logical course, but logic had evacuated the ballroom. Her fingers made contact with his. One dance, she mentally stipulated. His smile had the gleam of a honed blade. We will see, he said, and escorted her to the floor, his hand on her lower back a thermic brand, its pressure a terrifying promise. The man's considerable mass was contradicted by the fluid precision with which he moved her. You possess a natural grace, the subject observed, synchronizing with his lead. His posture was disciplined, the clear product of rigorous, formal instruction. A mandate from my mother, he stated, a fleeting shadow of affect crossing his features at the memory. The malignancy claimed her 2 years prior. A conventional apology felt inadequate, yet it was the only social script available. My condolences. His amber gaze established a direct connection with hers. She would have assessed you as remarkable. She held a particular admiration for self-actualized women, those for whom a male partner is a choice, never a necessity. A distinct, acerbic quality infused her tone. And you believe this is my choice? This is a performance. His reply was a soft-spoken threat. For the moment, his grip intensified, guiding her into a technically perfect rotation. A performance can be internalized as reality, he murmured near her hair, if the fabrication aligns with a deeper desire. Every neuroreceptor signaled for withdrawal, for a return to the reality of a charade for a negligible audience. Instead, she surrendered to his direction, compelled toward an emotional warmth she hadn't realized was dormant within her. The music transitioned, but they remained a static point in the revolving room. One could sense the environment's suspended respiration. Across the floor, her mother's expression was one of pure astonishment. Even her sister Lauren appeared uncharacteristically engrossed. And Tyler, he was a static figure at the bar, his face a neutral, indecipherable mask. Your former spouse is fixated, Giovanni noted, his voice a low resonance. She questioned the basis for his certainty. He is observing you, Giovanni specified, as a man observes another unearthing a treasure he himself discarded. A muscle articulated in his jaw. Men of his profile are psychologically transparent. She felt a vestigial impulse to defend him. You don't know his psychology. But Giovanni's assessment was delivered with clinical precision. I know he abandoned you. I know he bonded with your cousin. And I know he is unworthy of the grief you still process for him. His tone was soft, yet it possessed the cold, unyielding quality of tempered steel. Am I incorrect? The query hung between them with palpable weight. She offered no immediate response. You're arrogant, she finally articulated. I categorize it as perceptive, he countered, maneuvering her through another flawless turn. And my assessment is accurate. A sudden heat bloomed in her chest. Being accurate doesn't grant you a license for cruelty. His rebuttal was disarmingly direct. No, but being honest does. After a beat, he offered a quiet disclosure, as if admitting a personal flaw, a compulsion to repair what is damaged. I am not damaged, she hissed. No, he conceded, his thumb beginning to trace slow, deliberate circles on her skin. You are a woman who is entitled to substantially more. Permit me to be that for you. For this one evening, the music concluded, absorbed by a surge of applause. He released her with a tangible reluctance before offering his arm. Your family will require a debriefing. He was not wrong. As they neared their table, her cousin Sandra moved to intercept, her eyes sharp with acquisitive interest. Jessica, were you secreting this one away? She purred. Aren't you going to facilitate an introduction? Jessica affected a casual tone she did not possess. This is Giovanni Fioraldi. Giovanni, my cousin Sandra. The smile he offered in return was a perfect study in polite neutrality. A pleasure, he remarked on the lovely wedding, and Sandra clarified her peripheral connection to the family. Her gaze, however, was conducting a covert assessment of his suit's material and tailoring. Are you based here? She inquired. I reside in Chicago now, he answered, his voice smooth. My origins are in Naples. Commercial interest necessitated my presence here. His arm came to rest along the back of Jessica's chair in a gesture that was simultaneously proprietary and protective. We have been involved for several months now. Discreetly, Jessica values her privacy. The fabrication was so well constructed, it felt more substantial than the truth. Sandra could only stare, her mind audibly struggling to reframe her understanding. Several months? Sandra echoed, her skepticism a tangible force. You never mentioned anything. Jessica played her role, affirming her need for discretion, her hand trembling as it sought her wine glass. Sandra's own nod was saturated with feigned comprehension. Of course. Well, you've certainly acquired a prize. She leaned in, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. He's magnificent. What was your acquisition strategy? Before Jessica could construct a plausible fiction, Giovanni intervened. At the hospital, he said, his delivery suffused with sincerity. Her decisive action preserved the life of my partner's son. He then pivoted to her, his eyes projecting a manufactured devotion so potent it momentarily arrested her breathing. I invited her for coffee as a gesture of thanks, he continued, and she declined my invitation 3 times before finally acquiescing. Sandra emitted a laugh. That is classic Jessica protocol. The evening proceeded in this manner. A sequence of inquisitive relatives approached, and with each, Giovanni elaborated on their fabricated history using the data points she had provided. He had assimilated every detail. He knew her daughter Lily was 5 and had an affinity for drawing. The man was a virtuoso, rendering a fiction that was entirely without flaw. When they were finally in isolation, she could produce only one stunned observation. You possess an excessive aptitude for this. As the evening began to wane, she summoned the resolve to confront him. For deception, he parried, the corner of his mouth twitching upwards. It is a required skill in my professional sphere, a world he would only classify as business. I operate in import and export, he clarified, his fingers interlacing with hers, and hospitality. The Martinellis are one of my vendors. That is the nexus of my presence here. She scrutinized his features, searching for any micro-expression that would betray him. Is that the complete truth? His thumb stroked the interior of her palm. Were you anticipating a more hazardous narrative? Her negation was immediate and emphatic. I am not seeking out hazard. She attempted to withdraw her hand, but his grip remained yielding yet firm. This engagement is about surviving tonight, she asserted. It is about avoiding the role of the family's cautionary tale. His voice lowered, resonating with a new solemnity. You are not a cautionary tale, Jessica. You are a woman who executes 12-hour shifts attending to sick children before returning home to raise your own. That is not a subject for pity. That is a locus of power. His gaze was a tangible warmth on her skin. But before a response could be formulated, a figure occluded their light. It was Tyler. Her ex-husband loomed over them, his focus exclusively on her. We must speak, he stated. It was not a proposition. Outside. Before a refusal was possible, Giovanni released her hand and rose. It presents no difficulty. I need to confer with the Martinellis in any case, he said, supplying her with a plausible pretext. Utilize all the time you require. Then he was gone, leaving her contained with the psychological specter of her past. Tyler occupied the now vacant chair, his cologne an invasive sensory memory. Who is he? He demanded, preemptively dismissing any fabrication she might offer. You would have disclosed this to Camilla, he said, leaning in with a familiar arrogance. And Camilla is a known information vector. I've already made inquiries. No one in the city's medical community recognized the name Giovanni Fioraldi. He's not from that environment, she clarified. It involved a partner's child. A profound psychological weariness permeated her system. Frankly, Tyler, my life is no longer within your jurisdiction. You forfeited that privilege when you abandoned me during my pregnancy. That was a different context. I was unprepared for the roles of husband and father. But you're prepared now? With Vanessa?" She gestured toward his new wife, whose hand rested protectively on her own gravid abdomen. "Or is that child's legitimacy enhanced by the capital you always craved?" Tyler's expression hardened. "Do not presume a position of moral superiority over us. You are the one who materializes with a stranger, simulating a full recovery." And for an instant, the idea felt startlingly real. Perhaps she had recovered. Giovanni was a fiction designed for a single night, but the desire for that fiction to be true manifested as a sudden, acute pang. Content? Tyler's laugh was a coarse, abrasive sound. "Be realistic, Jessica. You're a single mother on a marginal income. You exhaust yourself and still cannot provide optimal resources for our daughter. That man in the bespoke suit will exit the moment he observes the true extent of your life's disarray." Each word was a precisely targeted psychological blow, striking her at her point of greatest vulnerability. Before she could formulate a defense, Giovanni was present. "Is there an issue?" His voice was placid, but it carried an edge that could fracture crystal. "No issue," Tyler replied, rising to his feet. "Just a conversation with my ex-wife." "Then the conversation has concluded." Giovanni's hand rested on the small of her back. "A storm is approaching. I am escorting Jessica home, unless you have a compelling reason to object." It was an assertion, not an inquiry. Tyler's gaze shifted between them, the impulse to engage in conflict warring with the knowledge that he would be defeated. He departed without another word. "I can arrange for a taxi," she said into the subsequent void. "This is not your responsibility." "The precipitation is intensifying. Permit me." Giovanni retrieved her purse. "Unless, of course, you are apprehensive about being in my sole company." And the truth was, she should have been. Her rational faculty issued one clear directive: "Do not enter this vehicle." She countermanded the order. This Giovanni did not project mere threat. He projected a disquieting equanimity that communicated, "I perceive your internal chaos, and I remain unmoved." Thus she capitulated with, "Very well, thank you." A pristine black SUV appeared, a driver standing by. Giovanni held her door as she was enveloped by leather upholstery that exceeded the value of her total assets. He followed, occupying the space with a nearness that was both correct and unassailable. Her address was relayed to the driver before she could verbalize the question. He remained consistently ahead of her thoughts, explaining, "Your cousin Sandra proved to be quite an asset earlier." Her reference to his residence was delivered with discernible gratification. Transit through rain-slicked Chicago fostered a temporary confined intimacy, where urban lights became abstracted patterns on the glass. To mitigate the tension, she initiated, "My gratitude for your intervention tonight." His response was clinical. Our objectives converged. Giovanni shifted, his features assuming a cast of authority in the intermittent shadows. "My previous proposition was entirely genuine. We maintained this deception for several weeks until familial scrutiny wanes and the pressure on me to marry ceases." "That is a pathological suggestion," she replied. "So you have indicated. Yet you consented to dance." In the darkness, his hand then enclosed hers with a swift, definitive action. "Jessica, be logical. You require insulation from your family's narrative, as do I. This arrangement is mutually beneficial." "By deceiving those we value?" she countered. No, by constructing a sanctuary from their constant judgment. He applied subtle pressure to her hand. A few weeks are all we need. We will engineer a quiet separation, no one is harmed, and we resume our independent lives. Rational thought indicated this was a catastrophic lapse in judgment. Yet the somatic memory of his touch from the dance made her evaluate the irrational. I have a 5-year-old daughter, she stated, her one condition. She is excluded from this. This fabrication will not intersect her reality. My comprehension is total. That is the agreement. This is an adult transaction. If either party wishes to terminate, it is done cleanly. That is understood. With the verbal contract established, Giovanni presented a card. Consider my proposal. Call if you consent. The vehicle stopped smoothly before her building. He escorted her through the rain to her door, a perfect facsimile of a gentleman, waiting until she was securely inside. From the lobby, she watched the car vanish into the Chicago storm. The card felt disproportionately heavy, a tangible token of a perilous choice. She should have discarded it, erased the event, and returned to a life of 12-hour shifts, rising debt, and familial disappointment. Instead, she retained the card, understanding she was approaching a critical error. Monday commenced with an alarm at 6 o'clock. She rose after only 3 hours of sleep, her mind in a recursive loop of Saturday night. The tactile sensation of Giovanni's touch, Tyler's manifest rage at seeing them, and the card feeling like a brand in her hand. Her daughter Lily was awake, assembling a block structure and humming softly. She glanced up, her blue eyes, a direct genetic marker from her reviled ex, Tyler, and his sole positive contribution, clear and innocent. Good morning, my sweet. Did you enjoy your time with Camilla? We made cookies, and we viewed the princess film 3 full times. Lily abandoned her construction for a tight embrace. Camilla said you attended Aunt Sophia's wedding. Was it magnificent? Utterly magnificent. She kissed her daughter's hair, inhaling the shampoo scent. Now please dress while I prepare breakfast. We must depart in 40 minutes. Her 12-hour duty at the Children's Hospital started at 7 a.m. promptly. She delivered Lily to kindergarten by 6:30, then navigated traffic, arriving with only 3 minutes remaining. The pediatric ward was its standard, chaotic symphony. The ceaseless, alert tones of machinery, the palpable stress of parents, and the sterile odor of bleach that was a constant in her life. Her phone began to vibrate incessantly before she completed her morning assessments. It was a textual onslaught from her family who had clearly spent Sunday analyzing her new male associate. Her cousin Sandra's message: "Contact me immediately. I require the full report on Giovanni." Lawrence followed. "Mother is experiencing extreme distress. Who is he?" Even her mother, an infrequent texter, sent, "We must discuss Saturday. Your father and I are deeply concerned." She silenced the device and concealed it in her pocket. The crisis she had initiated must wait. Her duty was to small, vulnerable patients. The morning devolved into a sequence of inserting IVs, administering medications, and coaching a 7-year-old girl through an acute asthma episode. By noon, she had nearly suppressed all thought of Giovanni and his absurd proposal. This was her world. Ill children, exhausted colleagues, and fiscal strain. She was updating a patient's chart when her ex, Tyler, appeared at the nurse's station. His presence violated protocol, but Tyler had a talent for infiltrating restricted areas. "We must speak," he said, obstructing her path, his proximity a form of trespass. "Immediately." "I am on duty," she stated, attempting to bypass him, "and your presence here is unauthorized." I informed security I was visiting my daughter. His jaw was a rigid, severe line. The vein in his temple pulsed, a known precursor to his loss of control. "Which is my prerogative. You consistently obstruct my access to her." "You do not request access," she retorted, her voice low as colleagues feigned inattention. "And since Lily is not a patient, that pretext will not withstand a single phone call." Tyler leaned closer, his tone becoming a toxic whisper. "Who is Giovanni Fioraldi? And do not offer the hospital donor fiction. I have made inquiries. No one of significant standing in Chicago's medical establishment recognizes his name." "Perhaps," she said, affecting an attitude of cool indifference, "that is because his sphere of influence is not your insular network. Perhaps he does not exist to seek the approval of your affluent associates." She finally maneuvered past him. "Now, I recommend you depart before I summon security." "Is he compensating you?" The query felt like a physical blow. She turned back toward him slowly. "Is that the arrangement? A transaction where he provides funds for you to serve as his social accessory?" The accusation was unexpectedly wounding. "Leave, Tyler." "Because that scenario is logical. You are financially desperate, he is wealthy, and you were never above accepting charity. I have never accepted $1 from you or any person that I did not earn myself." Her hands contracted into fists. "I work for my possessions, for everything Lily possesses, so you can discard your repugnant fantasy of me as some indigent woman for hire." "Then what is his relation to you?" Tyler insisted. "What could he possibly perceive of value in you?" "Something you were incapable of providing. Basic human respect." She addressed the nurse's station. "Security, please. There is an unauthorized individual on this floor." Tyler departed before security arrived, his parting look a clear signal of future conflict. She was trembling for her shift's remainder, her hands too unsteady to place an IV without assistance. 7 o'clock finally marked her release. She retrieved Lily from her after-school care, her daughter's cheerful monologue, a stark, jarring contrast to her own internal turmoil. Each traffic light was an opportunity to re-examine Tyler's venomous words, consider Giovanni's card, which felt like a challenge in her purse, and acknowledge she was nearing a ruinous decision. At 8, her friend Camila arrived for their Tuesday takeout custom, her expression etched with concern. Jessica understood an interrogation was imminent. She merely shifted food on her plate, awaiting her friend to break the silence. "My phone has been bombarded by your mother, Sandra, and Lauren," Camilla began bluntly. "They are demanding details about a man named Giovanni." Jessica's focus dropped to her meal, feigning deep concentration. "It's inconsequential, a single event, a dance at a wedding, so my family would perceive me as something other than their constant recovery project." "A favor?" Camilla's eyebrow rose in a perfect expression of skepticism. "Jess, men with his appearance do not perform favors. What is his actual motive?" "He needed his family to cease pushing marriage, and I needed mine to cease their pity. It was a symbiotic exchange." Then the crucial fracture in her narrative appeared. "It is. For now." "He proposed that we prolong the arrangement for a time," she at last confessed. "Only until the external pressures abate." Camilla recoiled slightly as the plan's sheer irrationality registered. "This is profoundly dysfunctional, Jess. You recognize that, correct?" "I do," she admitted, meeting her friend's eyes. "But you were not present, Cam. You did not experience the oppressive weight of their sympathy, or Tyler's condemnatory stare. For one evening, I felt significant. Is that response so abnormal? Not abnormal, Camilla replied, her tone softening as she took her hand. Just hazardous. Assure me you will exercise extreme caution. If this man signals trouble, you withdraw. I promise. The vow was invalid as it was uttered. She intended to make contact after Camilla left. Her friend remained until 9:30, a comforting presence while Lily was put to bed. Alone, she moved within the confines of her kitchen, ensnared by a construct she knew was fragile. At 10:15, as she hesitated, a sharp, authoritative knock sounded at the door from an unknown source. Through the peephole, two individuals were silhouetted in the dim light like urban specters, one bearing a prominent tattoo of a serpent encircling his neck. Jessica Reed. The voice penetrating the door was emotionless, tinged with a foreign cadence. A discussion concerning Giovanni Fioraldi is required. A primal impulse urged silence, a feigned absence. I have no knowledge of that individual. An operative produced a phone, its screen displaying irrefutable evidence from the wedding. The image captured her in Giovanni's embrace, a photograph of manufactured intimacy. You are his property, the man declared flatly. This makes you our concern. I mean nothing to him, she countered, her voice trembling. We are practically strangers. She clutched her phone, a symbolic defense. Leave now, or I will contact the authorities. Proceed, the taller operative stated, his composure absolute. We will be gone upon their arrival, but we will return Jessica Reed, and your compliance will be secured. Mr. Volkov does not tolerate being disregarded. They pivoted, their footsteps receding, leaving her in a state of acute distress against the door, her heart rate dangerously elevated. A new name, Volkov, fixated in her mind, inducing a profound sense of terror. In that moment, the subject's constructed fantasy collapsed, supplanted by a stark, menacing reality. Giovanni's card, retrieved from her purse, now seemed to radiate latent threat. Logic dictated severing all connection, her final opportunity to evade his toxic sphere. Yet, confronting this abyss, she initiated the call. He responded on the initial ring. Jessica. Her report was a frantic, disorganized cascade of information, 2 subjects, photographic evidence, the name Volkov, a promise of their return. A weighty, analytical silence occupied the line. His voice returned, a study in disquieting composure. Secure your door. Grant entry to no one. My arrival is in 15 minutes. Giovanni, what is occurring? Who are they? A full briefing will be provided upon my arrival. Remain in place and do not separate from Lily. The connection terminated. She engaged every lock, her gaze shifting to the sleeping child, oblivious to the high-stakes contract her mother had just entered. 14 minutes later, a second knock. The peephole revealed him, accompanied by an associate who appeared hewn from granite. This is my colleague Franco, Giovanni announced, breaching her threshold. His gaze performed a tactical sweep of her modest dwelling, assessing it not as a home, but as a strategic liability. He instructed her to provide a verbatim account of the encounter. During her debriefing, Franco maintained a stationary watch at the window, a physical bulwark against an unseen threat. With each detail she recounted, Giovanni's demeanor hardened, the scar on his chin a prominent white fissure. The Bratva, he stated, a Russian syndicate. They are initiating a move on my territory. The wedding photographs were compromised. They were informed you were my asset. How? She managed. We just met. The memory of their dance now felt like a mark of ownership. The fabricated narrative had been deceptively easy to internalize. Truth is irrelevant to them, Giovanni clarified after a brief, quiet exchange with Franco in Italian. Leverage is their only concern. This is my failure. I should have anticipated this. What is their objective? To utilize you against me, to compel me into a ruinous agreement. His focus locked onto hers, expressing regret that offered no solace. Jessica, my apologies. You were never meant to be involved. Then we end it, she pleaded. We can inform them it's a fabrication. Too late, Franco's abrasive tone interjected. You have been identified as his vulnerability. The truth is no longer a factor. The subject experienced a loss of motor control in her legs, collapsing onto the sofa. What is our next action? Giovanni knelt before her, his intense gaze compelling her focus. I will provide protection for you and for Lily. But to do so requires your absolute trust. Are you capable of that? All rational cognitive functions screamed for her to refuse, to expel him and his chaos from her home. Yet, immobilized by his stare, a single reflexive word emerged. Yes. Within 30 minutes, 2 bags were packed as her daughter slept, unaware her mother had enlisted them both in an undeclared conflict. Camilla arrived 20 minutes post-call, her expression a mixture of fear and resolve, a peer familiar with crisis. This is a temporary situation, correct? She asked softly, collecting Lily's comfort objects. You are not truly entangled in this. That was the intention, Jessica replied, forcing garments into a duffel. A simulated relationship for a few weeks. Now a Russian syndicate perceives me as a tactical asset. The Russian mob. Verbalizing the reality caused Camilla to sit abruptly on the small bed. Oh, Jess, what have you done? I don't know. Her hands exhibited tremors too severe to operate the bag's zipper. He claims he can offer protection. It is the sole concept I can grasp. Giovanni's residence was the fortress of steel and glass, a penthouse overlooking the Gold Coast valued far beyond her lifetime earnings. Franco transported them in a black sport utility vehicle, employing an indirect route to detect surveillance. Giovanni followed in a separate vehicle with a security team she hadn't known existed. A proprietary key activated an elevator that opened directly into a sterile, immaculate apartment overlooking the lake's black expanse. The art on the walls was authentic. The furniture appeared too valuable for use. It was an aesthetically pleasing but cold environment, the antithesis of the comforting space she had abandoned. The guest quarters are upstairs, Giovanni indicated, gesturing toward a cantilevered staircase. There are 3. Select one. Camilla, there is a room for you as well. I am required to remain here, her friend inquired, her eyes wide with alarm. Yes. Giovanni's reply was decisive and non-negotiable. Until the threat is neutralized, anyone in Jessica's proximity is now a liability, yourself included. What is the time frame? She asked, her grip on Lily's bag tightening. Days? Weeks? She began to protest, attempting to reclaim aspects of her normal life such as her employment and education. But Giovanni gently interrupted. Arrangements had been made. She was now on an official, paid emergency leave for the subsequent 2 weeks. Lily's school was informed of a family crisis, and a private instructor was scheduled. Jessica's anger flared. He possessed no such authority. His rebuttal was absolute. His authority was derived from ensuring their survival. His amber stare held her immobile. This was his domain, governed by his protocols, his primary protocol. Non-combatants are not to be caught in his conflicts. A soft sound from Lily, resting against her mother's shoulder, was sufficient to alter the tense atmosphere. Giovanni's rigid features relaxed. He proposed getting the child settled, deferring their conflict until morning. The bedroom he escorted them to was vast, nearly double the area of her entire former living space, with a large bed outfitted in exceptionally soft linens. The ensuite bathroom contained a walk-in shower and a large soaking tub. As Jessica settled her, Lily's 5-year-old eyes opened, disoriented by the new imposing surroundings. "Where are we?" she asked. "A friend's home, sweetie," Jessica fabricated. "It's like a sleepover." She carefully brushed a strand of hair from Lily's forehead. "Return to sleep," she murmured. The child was immediately asleep, one hand clutching a toy rabbit. Giovanni remained framed in the doorway, his expression inscrutable. "She is lovely," he observed quietly. "She possesses your eyes." The observation landed like a minor, calculated intrusion. "She possesses her father's other features," Jessica retorted coolly, adjusting the duvet, "which is likely for the better." Giovanni entered the room, his movement possessing the unnerving quiet of a large predator, his gaze fixed on Lily, with an intense curiosity uncommon in childless men. "What is her age?" he inquired. 5, Jessica stated, smoothing the bed. "She turned 6 in March." A precocious child who enjoys reading is fixated on dinosaurs and poses questions I cannot answer. His interest appeared genuine. "What questions?" The raw truth emerged, like the reason for her father's absence, or why she is the only child with a single parent. The admission created a palpable tension, heavy with past trauma. Giovanni's jaw tightened. "He is a fool." "He is a great many things," she conceded. "Fool is the kindest term." A silent, implicit pact formed between them as they observed the child. They maintained a quiet watch over her daughter, not as individuals joined by chance, but as a unified protective presence. "I should allow you to rest," Giovanni eventually said, turning to the door. "The intercom is there, should you require my assistance." As he prepared to exit, she voiced his name. "Giovanni, thank you." The basis for her gratitude was not yet clear, stemming only from a deep-seated feeling of security. His expression changed. "I will always ensure her safety, Jessica. Both of you. You have my solemn promise." With that vow, the following 3 days marked a surreal deviation from her established life. On Wednesday morning, Jessica awoke to find Lily already exploring the penthouse with the child's singular, intense focus. In the kitchen, Camilla prepared a meal while Giovanni's voice emanated from his office, a rapid flow of Italian that was simultaneously refined and menacing. At 10 o'clock, a pediatrician arrived for Lily's private examination. The physician was meticulous, but Giovanni intervened, interrogating him about immunizations and a cold Jessica had mentioned only once. "You recalled my comment about her having a cold?" Jessica asked after the physician departed. "You stated she was absent from school 2 weeks ago," he answered simply, offering Lily a tablet. "I pay attention, Jessica." A tutor, Mrs. Patel, arrived on Thursday and immediately established a rapport with Lily. Giovanni observed for a time before suddenly joining a drawing lesson, producing a surprisingly adept sketch of a horse and instructing Lily on shading techniques. "My mother insisted upon art lessons," he stated, his large hand maneuvering Lily's smaller one. "She equated aesthetics with commerce." From the kitchen, Jessica and Camilla observed the improbable interaction. They watched him connect with the child on her level, his validation appearing authentic and his patience exhaustive. His proficiency with her is remarkable, Camilla noted, and deeply unsettling. This observation was more menacing to Jessica than any criminal affiliation, as Lily was already inquiring about their next visit with Mr. Giovanni. The child had begun producing drawings of a tall, dark-haired man beside them, subconsciously filling a paternal void Jessica had suppressed for 5 years. The post-wedding tension had erupted within the penthouse. Giovanni's influence was pervasive and potent. In the economy of his movements, the cedar fragrance he carried, and the authority in his tone. Each evening, they functioned as a peculiar provisional family unit, with Giovanni fixated on every utterance from Lily. After Lily was asleep, they would convene on the terrace, the cityscape luminescent below, carefully navigating the issue binding them. He spoke of his mother, Sophia, who succumbed to cancer when he was 33. He depicted a protracted, painful farewell and the vow she extracted from him to find a woman who would challenge him, not merely tolerate his darker aspects. "She would have approved of you," he observed on the third night, his voice resonant and sure. "My mother respected women of independent power," he clarified. "She came from nothing, wed my father at 19, and constructed her own reality." Jessica finally posed the question that had lingered between them. "And what reality is that precisely?" Giovanni paused, taking a deliberate sip of wine. His public persona was that of a restaurateur, proprietor of 4 renowned Italian establishments. That was the visible domain. Beneath it lay the shadow enterprise his father had forged, a violent inheritance he was now obligated to preserve. "You are a part of the Mafia," she articulated, placing the unvarnished fact before them. A subtle smile touched his lips. "I favor the description, a civic body with adaptable ethics. But correct, my family has governed Chicago's underworld for 3 generations." The restaurant served as a legitimate front for a network of covert ventures. Regarding the Russians, "They covet those shadows," he said, his voice hardening to steel. "They were encroaching, employing brute force where his father would have negotiated. I am attempting diplomacy. They perceive it as a weakness." On Friday afternoon, Franco entered the study, his expression a mask of grim resolution. "We have identified the breach," he announced without preamble. "The origin of the photographs, the individual who informed Di Braffa about Jessica." Giovanni rose, his frame rigid with controlled energy. "Who?" Franco's response landed with the force of a physical blow. "Her cousin, David Reed. He has been supplying intelligence to the Russians for 6 months. He located the wedding photos online and identified a financial opportunity." The world seemed to drop from beneath Jessica. "David? My own cousin?" Franco substantiated the betrayal. David had informed the Bratva the marriage was a fabrication, but their leader, Dmitry Volkov, still viewed her as a pressure point. "His current location?" Giovanni's voice was stripped of all emotion. Pure ice. This was the complication. The Russians possessed him, a deterrent against retaliation. If Giovanni acted against them, they would execute David, simply to demonstrate capability. The room began to tilt. It was her irresponsible, debt-ridden cousin David who had sold his family to criminals to resolve his gambling losses. "We cannot simply abandon him," she heard her own voice say. "He is a fool, but he is family." Giovanni's face was like granite. "He jeopardized you and Lily." Her gaze locked with his. Family is not consistently about loyalty, Giovanni. Or sound judgment, she countered. How would your mother have handled this? The query struck its intended target. His jaw clenched before he instructed Franco. Arrange a meeting with Volkov. I will hear his terms. Franco cautioned. It is a setup. I am aware, Giovanni said, his focus fixed on her, but it appears I have chosen an inopportune time to develop a conscience. They arrived at a warehouse in Chicago's industrial sector, the scent of the lake penetrating the car's climate system. The Friday night air was cool, the clouds hanging heavy with unreleased rain. Beside her, Giovanni was a paradox, her guardian and the source of her greatest anxiety. You may remain here, he proposed for the third time. Franco and I are capable of managing this. I was the leverage, she retorted. I will participate in the negotiation. A message from Camilla confirmed Lily was asleep, asking about her return home, a term she now associated with his penthouse after just 5 days. You told me she would want them to recognize I was more than a pawn in their conflict, Jessica reminded him. My mother, he replied, his hand covering hers, would have numerous opinions, mostly expressed with language you ought not to hear. I spent 3 years in a hospital, she responded. My tolerance is quite high. The warehouse emerged from the gloom, a rusted concrete monolith. 2 black vehicles were parked in front, their occupants leaning against them with the casual menace of professional killers. Franco exited first, his gaze surveying the perimeter with trained expertise before he signaled it was clear. They entered an atmosphere thick with the smell of oxidation and moisture. A silent Russian gestured them further inside, into a scene resembling a film set. It was a vast chamber filled with shipping containers and illuminated by faint, hazy lights. At its center was a folding table where 2 men were positioned. She recognized the younger one, the enforcer from Tuesday. The senior man had to be Dmitry Volkov. He appeared to be in his late 50s, with gray hair and a severe military style and eyes chilled by a lifetime of inflicting pain. Mr. Fioraldi, Volkov's English was accented and sharp like fractured glass. You have brought the woman. A distinctly American action. Jessica is here by her own volition, Giovanni answered, pulling out a chair for her. This concerns her. Only because you have permitted it, Volkov countered, his eyes appraising her. An attractive prize. We are aware this union was for appearances. Our origins are irrelevant, Jessica interjected, speaking before Giovanni could. I am your leverage, which grants me a position at this table. The younger man began to chuckle, but Volkov silenced him with a glance. Audacious, the older man noted. Your cousin David spoke of your pride. It is why you refused him financial aid. His tone grew colder. Are you aware of David's whereabouts, Jessica Reed? Franco indicated you are holding him. Correct. In a nearby cellar, his debt is $30,000. He provided intelligence on you to settle it. Volkov produced a phone, its display illuminated. A portrait of contentment. The photograph captured them in mid-dance, their mutual expression so authentic, so devoid of pretense, it seemed an echo of a moment that never truly existed. David made an arrangement. Giovanni's voice was low, yet sharp as tempered steel. His debt is his own liability. Jessica, however, is our concern. The phone was withdrawn. That makes her a point of influence, so let us discuss terms. You will cede your 3 downtown blocks. In return, you receive David, and the nurse ceases to be of interest to us. No. The single word escaped her, and both crime lords turned toward her, their expressions of pure astonishment. You do not have the right to menace a person's family and then conduct this as a business transaction. Jessica, Giovanni began. No. Adrenaline, raw and undiluted, had incinerated her fear, compelling her to her feet. Threaten him, that is acceptable. That is the reality you inhabit. But you invaded my home. You brought that dread to the room where my 5-year-old child sleeps. You have my foolish cousin who is undeserving of whatever you practice in your basement. What sort of man wages war on a child's sanctuary? What empire is founded on intimidating women? Her query hung in the dense air. You believe shame is effective against me? Volkov's voice was flat, but a fatal glint appeared in his eyes. We operate on results, Miss Reed, not sentiment. Then this is your result, she proclaimed, the fabrication a sour, metallic taste. I refuse to be afraid of you. You assumed using me would ruin him. You merely revealed your character, and I will see this entire world burn before you gain anything from my fear. Giovanni was on his feet instantly, a living barrier between her and the danger. He affirmed, I support every word Jessica has spoken, but understand this. He presented a revised offer conceding the 3 blocks of real estate. The stipulation, the Bratva would agree to a pact that prohibited involving family, banned abductions, and designated zones where children reside as off-limits. Volkov paused, searching for the deception. Then Giovanni revealed his final move. I am giving you property I already intended to divest. The city is rezoning it next month, and its value will become negligible. Giovanni's composure was a fortress. Accept them. The financial liability they become will be your burden. In exchange, we establish a boundary. You remain on your side, we on ours, and all non-combatants are henceforth inviolable. A taut silence ensued before Volkov's gaze returned to Jessica. She possesses spirit, unstable but spirit. He stood. Agreed. 3 blocks, 1 pact, and civilians are sacrosanct. He extended his hand. And Mr. Fioraldi, some unsolicited counsel, if this marriage began as a pretense, you should strongly consider making it legitimate. A woman who confronts power with truth like that is a rare asset. My own mate was a subject of that archetype. My intelligence manifested in never relinquishing control. Their physical contact was brief, a transactional close to a stark negotiation. David's extraction was scheduled for that hour, delivered to a medical facility with a 6-month proximity injunction. Asset transfers were to conclude by the weekend. They exited the warehouse into a fine, aqueous mist. Upon reaching the vehicle, however, her systemic fortitude failed, as adrenaline vacated her system in a physiological crash. Giovanni stabilized her, maneuvering her into the seat. That exhibited either the highest order of bravery or a profound cognitive deficit. From the forward cabin, Franco's assessment was audible as the vehicle departed. The distinction remains unclear. Both, she articulated, her vocalization weak. It was unequivocally both. Giovanni reoriented to observe her. You confronted Dmitry Volkov. Do you process the implications of that? That you addressed him in that manner and continue to respire? Honestly, respiration was not the primary directive, she conceded, her hands exhibiting tremors. My focus was Lily's safety at your residence, and David's state in that facility. I grew weary of powerful men determining who is preserved and who is sacrificed. My function is a pediatric nurse, Giovanni. My entire existence is the protection of children. Following this disclosure, he initiated a kiss. The subject's terror abated as his mouth connected with hers, a searing, urgent contact saturated with unspoken drives. He supported her cranium with one hand, his thumb stroking her cheek, while the other arm drew her across the leather seating until no gap persisted between them. She mirrored his intensity, channeling 5 days of acute stress and a trace of hope into the bond. His movements were confident, and her body responded with instinct, wholly amnestic to Franco, whose gaze was now fixed on the road. When they disengaged for air, he pressed his forehead against hers. He vocalized his desire, tracing it to the moment her gaze met his from table 12, and she consented to dance. The affect deepened when she occupied his home with her child, entrusting him with a life she shielded from the world. It was solidified when she faced a Russian syndicate head in a derelict warehouse, declaring that threats to the city's young would not stand. His city, she had claimed. His perception differed. She could exist at the epicenter of his inferno and remain unscorched. His thumb brushed her lip as he pronounced their pretext officially terminated. The role play had disintegrated somewhere between Saturday and to present, a conclusion she could not dispute. An emotion had been developing as he sketched with Lily, spoke of his maternal figure, and as she found a strange peace in his voice on the terrace after 5 years. This, she breathed, was a beautiful catastrophe. The most valuable ones are, he responded, his lips meeting hers again, this time with the gentleness of a promise, not the intensity of a capture. He requested she remain, not for security, nor to fulfill an agreement, but to observe where this nascent, unrefined connection might progress. The vehicle's slow halt outside the penthouse, punctuated by Franco's soft cough, fractured the moment, a reminder of the dormant 5-year-old one level above. She articulated the clear risk. Her daughter would be caught in the fallout if their world were to destabilize. His reply was one of absolute conviction they would simply prevent destabilization. Assisting her from the vehicle, Giovanni outlined the new parameters. One day, one decision at a time, beginning with the admission that tonight had altered the entire equation. The elevator ascended in a tense silence. At the apartment door, Camilla's single, knowing glance at Jessica's presentation communicated a full understanding without any inquiry. After Camilla departed with Franco, Jessica and Giovanni stood alone near midnight in the expansive living area, the weight of their revised contract settling between them. Her impulse to check on Lily was a conditioned response, a retreat to the only non-complex element in her life. He permitted her to go, but first clarified the terms of his proposition. This was not a transient sanctuary, but a space she could define as a true home. In her room, Lily slept soundly, unaware her mother had just negotiated with criminals and then engaged with the man who made her negate all logic for flight. Jessica observed the rhythmic respiration of her chest. This remarkable child she had with a man who merited nothing. She now had to assess if she possessed the fortitude to risk 2 psyches on a man who might just merit everything. Downstairs, Giovanni signified a potential future. Upstairs, her daughter represented her present reality. On the staircase between them, she confronted a truth more alarming than any armed Russian. She was forming an attachment to Giovanni Fioraldi. And for the first time since Tyler's abandonment, she resolved to allow the descent and observe the outcome. The first light of Sunday entered the penthouse, rousing her before the alarm. Her cognitions were a recursive loop of Friday's events. The kiss, the warehouse, the flat affect of Dmitry Volkov, and the certainty in Giovanni's tone when he declared their pretense was over. She located him in the kitchen, already dressed before 8 o'clock, preparing coffee. With Lily still asleep, a unique quiet settled between them. A discussion about the subsequent phase was necessary, he stated, passing her a mug. Her own thoughts had followed a parallel course. Her fingers absorbed the ceramic's heat as she noted their pact was designed as a short-term fabrication, a few weeks of performance until their families would disengage. Now the construct had morphed into a complex reality. Giovanni leaned on the counter, his sharp amber eyes fixed on her. He relayed Franco's morning intelligence. David was discharged from the hospital, barred from Chicago for 6 months. The Bratva situation was contained. The truce was stable. His words signified that she and Lily were finally at liberty to return to their former life. The words should have registered as liberation. Instead, they resonated as a closing portal. She struggled to maintain vocal control. The threat was neutralized, the agreement concluded. She murmured her gratitude, the farewell suspended, unvoiced between them. That was one possibility, Giovanni conceded, setting his mug down. He then presented a second. Franco could construct a complete identity reset. Flawless new documentation, a new city, a totally new biography. He could provide her and Lily absolute security, placing them where Tyler or his associates could never reach. Financial autonomy, a clean slate, every resource she could require. He was offering to facilitate their disappearance. The concept struck her like a blast of cold water, a definitive exit from his sphere of influence. This option, he specified, stemmed from no debt and was bound by no contract. His expression was a stoic, unreadable mask. He had pulled her into this vortex. A clean extraction was the only ethical course he could prefer. Before she could formulate a response, the soft sound of feet on the stairs broke the tension. Lily appeared in her sleepwear, her hair in a chaotic state, holding a stuffed rabbit. "Good morning, Mommy. Good morning, Mr. Giovanni." She pulled herself onto a stool. "Are we having pancakes? Mr. Giovanni makes the absolute best ones." "That is within my capabilities," Giovanni confirmed, already gathering the components. "Will the preference be chocolate chip or blueberry?" "Both," Lily declared, her small form vibrating with excitement. "Mom, can't we stay here permanently? I love it here." She then announced that Mr. Giovanni would be instructing her in architectural sketching later. Jessica felt an internal fracture. "Sweetheart, we are Mr. Giovanni's guests. We cannot simply reside with him indefinitely." "But why?" she countered, her gaze shifting between them with the flawless reasoning of a 5-year-old. "He has numerous unoccupied rooms." "And you have no objection, correct, Mr. Giovanni?" His gaze met Jessica's over the child's head. "Not in the slightest." "Lily, my love, go wash your hands for breakfast," Jessica instructed softly. As the child moved away, the two adults were again isolated in silence. "She is developing an attachment to you," Jessica stated, her voice a near whisper. It was the precise outcome she had feared. If they departed, the child would have inquiries without simple resolutions. "Then do not depart," Giovanni proposed, the whisk in his hand moving in a smooth, hypnotic rhythm. "Remain. Let us observe what this could become, absent the pretense of protection. Merely two individuals assessing a potential future. You manage a criminal syndicate, Giovanni. You conduct transactions with killers. Your adversaries could use me and Lily as leverage." Her knuckles whitened on her mug. How could any life be constructed on such a volatile foundation? He contended that his world was not a detached reality. "That is a component of me, but so is the man preparing pancakes for your daughter. the one who wishes to teach her to draw buildings. He was a functional paradox, a man who orchestrated 3 nights of constant surveillance on her, yet would incinerate half of Chicago to ensure her safety. And now he cooked pancakes, asking her, fundamentally, to accept his entire persona, the protector and the predator. He was not requesting she embrace the pathology, only that she acknowledged the pathology was real. Before she could reply, Lily returned, vocalizing about her art instruction and requesting more chocolate chips. The scene projected a surreal domesticity, a portrait of a family unit that did not exist. This quiet, normative behavior was more unsettling than any firefight. It felt too authentic, too appropriate for a connection only days old. Following the morning meal, she presented a counter-strategy, a return to her post at the hospital on the subsequent day. Giovanni's placid demeanor dissolved. He categorized the notion as dangerously impulsive. The syndicate truce was tenuous, the environment volatile. She interrupted, framing her return as a psychological imperative. She required the retrieval of a piece of her former identity, a proof against the role of a mere ward in his tower. For any functional dynamic to exist between them, she had to be a distinct entity. He observed her for a protracted, silent interval before stating his conditions. A private chauffeur and a security detail stationed at the medical facility. This was non-negotiable. She acquiesced, learning the mechanics of concession. However, his operatives were to remain unseen. She refused to have guards patrolling the corridors of a pediatric ward. Monday commenced with the cadence of a life she previously recognized. She deposited Lily at kindergarten with a parting gesture and proceeded to Lurie Children's for her first shift in over a week. The hospital was the same managed chaos she recalled. Frightened children, anxious parents, the antiseptic odor and rhythmic beeps that constituted a peculiar form of sanctuary. Her supervisor intercepted her at the entrance. "Jessica, it is wonderful to see you again. Has your family matter been fully resolved?" "It has," she confirmed, expressing gratitude for the accommodation. "Of course," her supervisor responded. "And you will not believe this. One of our primary benefactors inquired about you specifically, an exceptionally generous man. He wished to ensure your position was secure." She offered Jessica a knowing, conspiratorial look. "Your new partner must be a person of influence." Jessica allowed the inference to stand. It was significantly less convoluted than the reality. The hours progressed in a familiar sequence, monitoring intravenous drips, dispensing medications, and calming a 3-year-old with pneumonia. Shortly after 2 in the afternoon, she was paged for a long-term patient. 7-year-old Marcus was in the 8th month of a grueling battle with leukemia. He was present for another chemotherapy treatment, depleted, but with his psyche intact. Nurse Jessica, his expression brightened upon her entry. "You returned. I missed you. I missed you as well, champ." She assessed his vital signs, documenting the information. "How are you managing?" "Tired," he admitted. "But my mother calls me a warrior." The child's digits clutched the hospital bedding, a minor gesture that betrayed a significant internal conflict. Marcus presented a question that carried a weight far beyond his years. He asked if favorable outcomes existed beyond the realm of fiction. The query landed with heavy, profound impact. Seated on the edge of his bed, she informed him that happiness was a form of compensation for the brave. He noted his mother conveyed a similar sentiment regarding courage. Then, with the piercing insight of a 7-year-old, he inverted the lesson, asking if she too was demonstrating bravery. The patient had assumed the role of confessor. "Yes, Marcus," she whispered, "I am." His logic was therefore uncomplicated. "Then you will receive your happy ending the same as me." A pact was thus established between them. Jessica exited his room with more than lacrimal discharge. She departed with a fortified sense of purpose. She juxtaposed Marcus's fight for every single respiration against her own trepidation about pursuing a complicated form of contentment. Her shift concluded at 7. Within the concrete sepulchre of the parking garage, she messaged Giovanni of her departure. The October atmosphere was sharp against her skin, her exhalation visible in the faint illumination. Far above, the unblinking lenses of surveillance systems were the sole witnesses to the events of the 30 seconds before a response could be mobilized. Tyler materialized from the shadows between vehicles. His voice was a fine edge, taut with a controlled rage, as he stated their need to confer. He was present to question her about her new circumstances, equipped with intelligence he had unearthed. "Tyler, not at this moment," she protested, moving toward her vehicle. "Return home to your pregnant wife." His fingers secured her arm, not with aggression, but with an unyielding finality, halting her movement. He enumerated his discoveries. Giovanni Fioraldi, proprietor of 4 Italian restaurants and a subject to interest in multiple major financial inquiries in Chicago. "Were you aware?" he demanded. "Or did Giovanni's wealth render your ethics flexible?" "Release me," she commanded, pulling her arm away. "My life is not your concern." "It is," he retorted, "when my daughter has involvement with a criminal." He advanced, deploying his final gambit. "She remains my daughter." He would not permit Lily to be assimilated into such a world. "Your daughter?" The inquiry sparked a conflagration she had suppressed for 5 years. She delivered a recital of his dereliction, his departure during her pregnancy, his marriage to her cousin, his complete disengagement from Lily's life, both fiscally and emotionally. This abrupt display of paternal solicitude was a transparent facade for his own animosity. Tyler's response was a distorted echo of her own statements, positioning him as the agent rescuing her from her own misjudgments. His expression hardened. He then articulated his strategy. He would report Fioraldi to the authorities, and upon the man's arrest, he would sue for custody, depicting her as a mother who exposed her own child to jeopardy. The intensity of her fury was extinguished by a sudden, chilling dread. "You wouldn't dare." His smirk was a sufficient answer. "Terminate your involvement with him, Jess, or you will lose her." A different voice, as sharp and cold as fractured glass, sliced through the tension. "That will not be an issue." Giovanni stepped out of the gloom by the elevator, his associate Franco positioned behind him. Their movements were those of predators converging on a well-laid snare. The blood drained from Tyler's face as he threatened to call security. "I would strongly recommend that," Giovanni said, his posture relaxed but his gaze glacial. He would relish explaining to them why Tyler was menacing his girlfriend. Tyler's denial, "I did not touch her," was countered with a placid, fatal reference to the cameras. Franco made a slight gesture with his head toward a blinking red indicator on a camera overhead. "The city of Chicago," Giovanni observed, "treats matters of assault with great seriousness, particularly when they concern an obsessive ex-husband." Tyler's composure finally broke, his voice trembling. "This is not a threat," Giovanni clarified, continuing his advance. "It is a demonstration of cause and effect." At the sound of his name, Franco produced an envelope. It contained an itemized bill for delinquent child support, a 5-year documentary trail of his neglect. The total was approximately $43,000, paired with a restraining order to be filed should he ever approach Jessica again. Tyler seized the documents, stammering that no child support had been agreed upon. "You departed before she had the opportunity to file," Giovanni stated, his tone now stripped of any warmth. "Abandoning your family does not nullify your legal responsibilities." His legal counsel, he assured him, was relentless and prepared for a protracted, costly conflict. He then posed a question of pure pragmatism. Tyler could not realistically prevail in a resource contest against a superior legal adversary. Trapped, Tyler asked if he was being threatened with a lawsuit. "Please proceed," Giovanni encouraged, his smile disquieting. He openly invited Tyler to allow a judge to hear the narrative of a neglectful father who abandoned his pregnant girlfriend for her cousin. "Let a court determine which parent is deficient," Giovanni suggested. Then a second option was presented, his tone a velvet-covered menace. Tyler could cease this paternal masquerade, this 5-year delayed performance of concern, and the documents would be destroyed. The confrontation would be erased from history. A profound silence descended in the garage as Tyler weighed his alternatives, his gaze shifting between the documents, the woman, and the orchestrator of his undoing. "Fine!" he spat, casting the envelope to the ground. "She's yours!" He departed in a surge of acrimony. Giovanni remained immobile, a monument to his own power, waiting for Tyler's engine to recede. Only then did he turn to Jessica. "Are you unharmed?" She was not. A physiological tremor from the adrenaline surge persisted. Then the realization struck her. The intelligence gathering, the legal preparation, it was all a preemptive maneuver. "When?" was the only word she could form. "The moment he posed a liability," Giovanni replied, retrieving the envelope. His methodology, he explained, was not to react to threats, but to excise them before they could affect his assets. The subsequent question escaped her, more pointed than intended. What if he represents the danger? What if his existence imperils Lily? His gaze met hers as he delivered a solemn vow. He would neutralize himself as well, banishing from their lives if it became necessary. The choice, he insisted, remained exclusively hers. Franco retreated silently to the vehicle. In the frigid stillness that followed, Jessica evaluated her desire against the inherent risk. Her whispered decision, "Take me home, to your home," was an embrace of contradiction. He offered his arm, and her act of taking it solidified a commitment more daunting than Tyler's threats. The ensuing 2 weeks dissolved into the construction of a new reality atop the remnants of the old. She relocated to his penthouse, but retained her own apartment, an isolated sanctuary to separate her daughter's world from the periphery of his. Giovanni, on his part, adapted to the pleasant chaos of life with a 5-year-old with remarkable facility. He mastered the nightly ritual of 3 stories and the art of concealing vegetables in her meals. He attended a parent-teacher conference, seated on a comically undersized chair, as Mrs. Rodriguez praised Lily's qualities. The remark about 2 such committed parents hung between them, unresolved. Camila also assimilated into this new configuration. Her after-school responsibilities were maintained, with transit arranged by a discreet driver named Anthony, who became another component in their unusual family unit, moving them between the penthouse and her apartment for a necessary dose of the familiar. A sense of dissociation is noted by the subject's peer, Camilla, as the child draws. 2 weeks passed. Your existence was precarious. Now you occupy a secured high-rise residence. The subject, Jessica, performs a grounding ritual, preparing tea, while questioning the morality of her improved emotional state. Her peer validates the feeling as human, but cautions that rapidly acquired stability is inherently fragile. The subject's maternal figure exhibits classic cognitive dissonance, vacillating between approval of her daughter's elevated status and fear of its source. The subject's sister, Lauren, offers unconditional support, scheduling a social evaluation for her 32nd birthday at Giovanni's new venue. The stated objective is to assess the individual credited with improving the subject's disposition, moving him from an unknown entity to a known quantity. Saturday arrives with a sharp drop in temperature, presaging winter. Jessica selects a deep green garment, a previously resisted gift from him, indicating weakening boundaries. The child is presented in wine-hued velvet, her hair elaborately braided. Upon their arrival, Giovanni offers a low, possessive vocalization. Beautiful. His attire, a charcoal gray suit, projects effortless dominance. An unfastened collar serves as a calculated signal of both refinement and latent aggression. Their appearances are coordinated. The child, exhibiting high positive affect, inquires about a favored location. A different one, he responds, lowering his posture to establish rapport. This venue specializes in northern Italian cuisine. However, I have arranged for the chef to prepare your preferred item. Fioraldi's River North occupies a strategic corner overlooking the Chicago River, projecting an image of welcoming warmth. For familial assessment, Giovanni has secured a private space, isolating the group from public observation. The sister Lauren and her spouse, Daniel, arrive first. Lauren displays indicators of high socioeconomic status, yet her physical embrace appears authentic. Jessica presents a gift, a rare book acquired through an associate, and deflects inquiries about its cost. I have a contact, Jessica states, displaying a newfound confidence. Daniel's handshake with Giovanni is clinical and firm, a tactile assertion of control common among those in life or death professions. Associating a face with the reputation is necessary. Lauren has been inquisitive. Giovanni concedes this point with practiced composure. Her caution is justified. I would exhibit similar vigilance regarding my own sister. The parental figures arrive thereafter. The father displays nonverbal cues of discomfort with his formal attire. The mother immediately begins a systematic environmental scan. This encounter is a formal appraisal of his suitability. Mr. and Mrs. Reed, he initiates, deploying his rehearsed charm. Your presence at Lauren's celebration is appreciated. We are on your territory, the mother observes, accepting his hand. The gratitude should be ours. A third sibling, Sophia, and her spouse arrive with calculated tardiness, exhibiting the affect of a newly bonded pair. Vanessa appears last. At 8 months pregnant, her condition is her defining physical trait. She is unaccompanied. The absence of her partner, Tyler, creates a palpable tension and elicits a visceral stress response in Jessica. Jessica, she greets with a brief, rigid gesture. You appear well. As do you, Jessica responds, a clear deception. The woman presents as depleted, a fatigue exceeding physiological norms. How is your condition? Unwieldy, distressing. I desire the pregnancy to conclude, she states. Tyler conveys his regrets. A professional obligation? The fabrication is transparent. Tyler is engaging in avoidance behavior concerning Giovanni, and Jessica, the subject experiences conflicting emotions, relief, and a desire for her former partner to witness her elevated status. The meal is an elaborate display of resources orchestrated by Giovanni. As initial social rigidity subsides, discourse commences. The father engages Giovanni on architecture. Lauren and Daniel probe his industry knowledge. The mother's affect improves as Giovanni provides a beverage for the child to mimic adult participation. The crucial maneuver in securing the family's approval, however, is Giovanni's interaction with the child. Post-meal, the drowsy child initiates physical contact. He reciprocates with a seamless protective gesture, continuing his conversation while stroking her hair. The action appears reflexive, suggesting rehearsal. His handling of her is remarkable, Lauren confides to Jessica in private. It is an unexpected competency. I concur, Jessica affirms to her reflection. He exhibits great patience. She feels validated by him. Her validation is paramount. To him, yes. Lauren meets her sister's eyes in the mirror. Jessica, your state has been a source of significant concern. Observing your self-depletion, your solitary child-rearing, your refusal of all aid. Now, a shift has occurred. Your affect is lighter. You seem to be permitting positive emotion. I am attempting it, Jessica verbalizes with difficulty. Is it permissible to feel this with a man of his nature? A man of his nature? Lauren reorients to face her directly. A high-status male who offers respect, who demonstrates profound attachment to your offspring, who assessed our dysfunctional family unit and deemed you a valuable asset. She grips Jessica's shoulders. He is not the pathology. Tyler was. Mother's maladaptive standards were. Your own distorted self-worth was the core issue. They return as a large celebratory confection is presented, eliciting a strong response from the child. Lauren performs the birthday ritual, and for the first time in 5 years, Jessica experiences a feeling of social integration. Vanessa departs post-dessert, citing fatigue, but pauses beside Jessica. I feel positive regard for your situation, she states quietly. I believed I was acquiring your desired outcome, but you may have averted a negative one. Tyler is not. She hesitates. He is a different person than my initial assessment. Vanessa. Cease, she interrupts with a gesture. I wish to acknowledge that your outcome is superior. Her focus shifts to Giovanni, who is methodically folding a napkin into an animal shape for the child. Retain him. An individual of his type is uncommon. She departs before Jessica can formulate a response, leaving a vacuum of unresolved queries. As the event concluded, the parents expressed profuse gratitude to Giovanni. The father mandated a future meeting. Sophia suggested a joint social outing. Lauren's embrace was forceful, her verbal approval unequivocal. They traversed the illuminated urban landscape, the child inert and unconscious in her safety restraint. This statement served as a catalyst, breaching another of her emotional defenses. Giovanni, I can anticipate your cognitions, the need for caution, the child's deepening attachment, the potential for severe emotional trauma should the structure collapse. He observed her as external light illuminated them. But Jessica, consider an alternative outcome. What if this is the standard process for constructing a stable family unit? She could offer no rebuttal. Later, observing him transport the sleeping child with practiced ease, she began to entertain the possibility of the arrangement's permanence. That evening, on the terrace, he located her. My gratitude, he vocalized, encircling her from the rear. For granting me access, for entrusting me with the child, for engaging in this illogical endeavor, for leaving me no alternative. She relaxed into his physical control. For the preceding 14 days, for this evening, for each moment you reinforce the delusion of a positive outcome. They remained in place as she for the first time contemplated a future beyond the current provisional state, where her partner was a permanent fixture to whom her attachment was already profound, and her offspring had a paternal figure who selected, rather than abandoned, her. 14 days, the period since the warehouse incident when Giovanni decreed their simulated bond would transition to an authentic one. Subjective time perception is irrelevant in the face of such potent positive reinforcement. The domestic environment is now defined by the presence of a male who projects idealization onto her, while her offspring rests in a state of perceived security. Camilla's prognosis may be accurate. Such acute, rapid onset euphoria is often transient. Yet, under his physical containment that night, she performed a risk assessment and accepted the odds. Giovanni Fioraldi, with his high-threat environment and controlled tenderness, represented an acceptable wager. A discernible chill marked the Saturday evening atmosphere, forecasting the imminent Chicago winter. 3 weeks had elapsed since the subject's attendance at Sophia's wedding, a temporal distortion perceived as both an eternity and an instant. The patient, Giovanni, had orchestrated a dinner at his Gold Coast establishment, Fioraldi's on Astor, under the guise of new beginnings. It became clear his definition of formal involved commandeering the entire second floor of his Michelin-starred restaurant, an assertion of dominance over a venue with a 6-month reservation list frequented by the city's elite. Such a shutdown was a significant deviation from protocol. The subject initially resisted his plan. "I require privacy," was his sole, unrevealing explanation, his expression a carefully maintained facade. Consequently, she was observed in their penthouse fitting the child, Lily, into a crimson velvet dress, attempting to suppress her own somatic anxiety. The evening was saturated with unspoken significance, a pressure she could not yet identify. "Mom, you're ruining my hair," the child protested, resisting her mother's agitated state. "Mr. Giovanni assigned me a crucial task, and my appearance must be flawless." "A crucial task?" She adjusted the girl's collar. "It is confidential," the child stated, her expression reflecting the exhilaration of a 5-year-old entrusted with a critical secret. "A very positive one." "The greatest secret of all time." At this juncture, Giovanni materialized in the doorway, a projection of curated perfection in a dark charcoal suit that signaled immense, understated capital. His amber eyes assessed them with overt, warm approval. "My 2 preferred females looking utterly exquisite." He descended to one knee, aligning his gaze with Lily's. "Are you prepared for your special assignment this evening?" "Yes," the child confirmed. "I rehearsed all week as instructed." "Rehearsed what?" Jessica's focus shifted between them as a nascent unease began to form. "You will see," Giovanni stated, rising to offer his arm. "Shall we proceed?" Upon arrival, the restaurant was a theatrical display of light, illuminating tables set with stark white linen and crystal refracting light into fragments. The second floor, however, their isolated stage for the event, had been completely reconfigured. Glimmering lights were threaded through the exposed brick, with candles emitting light from every available surface. A single long table, set for 15, occupied the center, with each place marked by a name in elegant script. Her family unit was already assembled. Her parents stood near the windows, the father gesturing toward the Chicago skyline as the mother observed with an uncharacteristic, serene expression. Lauren and Daniel were engaged in conversation with Sophia and her new spouse. Even a noticeably pregnant Vanessa was present, appearing fatigued but accounted for. Jessica. Sophia initiated an immediate, forceful embrace, radiating the undiluted euphoria of a recent bride. I am so relieved you are present. Giovanni indicated tonight held great importance. To be candid, I have no information regarding this event's purpose, she conceded. That is a function of your known aversion to surprises, Lauren interjected, placing a kiss on her cheek. Simply comply and enjoy it. Given his tendencies, it will be a significant production. Then, improbably, Camilla emerged from the kitchen. You did not believe I would be absent for this, correct? She inquired, drawing her into a firm hug. Giovanni contacted me 3 days prior and essentially mandated my attendance. I am experiencing the sensation that the entire world is conspiring against me, Jessica murmured, an irrepressible smile forming. The final arrivals were Franco and his wife Maria, with whom she had only limited prior contact. He directed a brief, meaningful glance at Giovanni before the group was seated. If everyone would please occupy their seats, Giovanni declared, his voice possessing an inherent authority. We have much to commemorate this evening. The subsequent meal was a culinary exhibition, with Giovanni narrating each course, transitioning fluidly between the roles of host and proprietor. He had positioned her at the table's head, with himself to her right and the child to her left. Surrounded by her kin, the space resonated with what appeared to be authentic, profound laughter. During the main course, her mother leaned closer. Giovanni, this is truly exceptional. Jessica is exceptionally fortunate to have acquired a man such as you. No, Mrs. Reed, I am the fortunate party. His hand made contact with hers beneath the tablecloth. Your daughter serves as a daily reminder that being a prize is meaningless without a partner to share it with. Her father, who had been largely silent, finally contributed. You treat her well, both of them. That is the extent of a father's requirements. The simple gravity of his validation was sufficient to induce an emotional blockage. After 5 years of viewing her life as a misstep, he was finally acknowledging them. All of them. Dessert was served as the exterior sky transitioned to black, rendering the city into a grid of electric points. Gold-dusted chocolate soufflés were placed before each guest. Before we indulge, Giovanni said, rising and striking his glass. There is a statement I must make, or more accurately, an inquiry I must pose. The subject's cardiac rhythm seemed to cease. Across the table, she registered complicit smiles. She was the sole individual unaware of the scripted dialogue. 3 weeks ago, I attended a wedding for business purposes with no expectation of a significant outcome. His gaze located hers and held it. Instead, I discovered Jessica concealed at a corner table, attempting to become invisible when she ought to be venerated. He repositioned himself to her side. I proposed a contract, a fabrication intended to preserve social standing for us both, and Jessica, in her brilliance and courage, consented. We danced, we performed, we fulfilled our designated roles. The child Lily giggled beside her, a confederate in the elaborate deception. But in the interval between that dance and the present, the artifice dissolved, the arrangement became authentic, and I developed a profound emotional attachment to a woman who saves children during 12-hour shifts. who raises an exceptional daughter with composure and who informed a crime boss he was not permitted to intimidate children in her city. Tears were now flowing without restraint down her face. Giovanni knelt on one knee, producing a velvet box from his coat. Jessica Reed, I am no longer proposing a simulated arrangement. I am offering you reality. My entire world, my essence, my name. I am offering you a life where you are never disregarded, where you are treasured at all times. He opened the box. The diamond within captured light like a contained star. Will you marry me? The room became completely silent as every guest appeared to suspend respiration. All attention was fixed on her. Affirm, Mom, Lily whispered audibly, shifting in her chair. Affirm so I may perform my special task. Several chuckles alleviated the tension in the room. She observed this man, who had become her stable anchor in a mere 3 weeks, the individual who prepared pancakes for her child and confronted criminals, all while regarding her as if she contained the cosmos. Yes, the word emerged, constricted by emotion. Of course, yes. Giovanni fitted the ring onto her finger, a perfect match, and raised her for a kiss as the room erupted in applause. When he released her, Lily was pulling at his sleeve. Now? Is it my time? It is your time, he affirmed, placing her on a chair for visibility. She retrieved a velvet pouch from her purse and extracted 2 simple, polished gold bands. I present the matrimonial rings, she declared. Mr. Giovanni designated me as ring warden, and I am displaying them so you understand this is genuine and I am a permanent member of this family. She offered them with a seriousness unique to a 5-year-old. The room again filled with laughter and sincere applause. Permanently, Giovanni echoed, his gaze fixed on Lily with an affection so intense it was nearly painful to witness. You both are my possessions now. The remainder of the evening became a haze of champagne, and her mother's insistence she was not crying. Despite her tear-streaked face, Lauren seized her in a breath-constricting hug, stating she had never appeared so luminous. Sophia and her husband instantly offered to organize the entire wedding. Then Vanessa approached, her hand on her abdomen. My sentiment was not disingenuous, she said quietly. I am truly happy for you. Tyler is... She hesitated, seeking the correct terminology. Tyler is just Tyler, but Giovanni operates on another plane. You must not release him. I will not, she vowed. But in truth, what is your condition? Fatigued, pregnant, and reevaluating every decision I have ever made, she replied with a tired smile. But that is a separate narrative. Tonight is about you finally receiving your due. As Chicago's lights shone like fragmented gems far below, she stood with Giovanni on the restaurant's balcony, detached from the celebration inside. There, the child, Lily, was dancing with Franco, her laughter a distinct sound in the October air. 3 weeks, she registered. It felt like a different lifetime when she was at another wedding, mired in self-pity. Now she was betrothed to a man she believed she had loved since their first uncoordinated dance. A connection at a profound, spiritual level. He encircled her from behind with his arms, a non-verbal pledge. My mother subscribed to that belief, he whispered, that fated souls have instant recognition. My mother would have adored you. Her hands came to rest upon his. The complete entity, she affirmed. The chaotic beauty, the challenging history, the single parent with a 5-year-old child. She would have loved you unconditionally. His voice was a raw composite of warmth and sorrow, and she would have maintained that the best things merit a fight, particularly when they are complex. So what is our protocol? She pivoted in his arms to face him. We organize a wedding, he began. Determine how to integrate my chaotic existence with your structured one, and inform Lily her new father not only owns restaurants but also attends meetings with extremely influential individuals. One day at a time. His kiss on her forehead was the seal on their new contract. The subjects began constructing a shared reality from the initial deception, a belief system where aberrant attachments can flourish in hostile environments. A specific musical track was introduced, an auditory trigger from a prior staged event at Sophia's wedding. This stimulus effectively collapsed the temporal distinction between the fraudulent past and the emergent emotional present. Giovanni's reenactment of a physical gesture from 3 weeks prior at table 12 initiated a behavioral loop. This was not a performance, but a reinforcement of a new psychological state. She accepted his hand, entering a social tableau that validated her new perception, observing Lily, Camilla, and her parents displaying approval. The collective witness of this event solidified the subject's transition from a calculated fabrication to a perceived, genuine attachment. Giovanni escorted her to the center of the room, a focal point for their new relational narrative. His physical contact on her back, identical to the touch from 3 weeks before, now served as an anchor for this new reality, not a deception. With the cessation of the initial arrangement, the dynamic shifted from a transactional contract to a mutual, codependent bond. The male subject provided validation to a female subject with a documented history of feeling marginalized. In turn, she began rationalizing the preceding crisis as a necessary catalyst for a positive outcome. Her verbal affirmation, "I love you," was met with his response, "I love you both," which expanded the dyadic bond to include the child, solidifying his new role as my family, my home. In a period of just 3 weeks, a complete psychological inversion had occurred. The contractual partner was now perceived as a permanent mate. The unknown male was cognitively reframed into the idealized paternal figure she believed her daughter required. Within Giovanni's proximity and surrounded by validating social figures, the subject experienced a moment of cognitive resolution. She concluded that certain individuals are introduced by circumstance at critical junctures, and that emotional bonding defies logical frameworks or normative timelines. Her psyche fully embraced the paradox that a foundational lie could produce a state of perpetual truth with him. She categorized this complex psychological phenomenon as a form of inexplicable, potent magic, a common method of reconciling trauma-induced bonding.
Let the story pause for a second because the obvious drama is not actually the deepest one. Yes, the wedding is brutal. Yes, the ex-husband is shameless. Yes, the rich family does that polished upper-class form of violence where nobody slaps anyone, but somehow a seating chart still feels like a public execution. Yes, the dangerous stranger in the expensive suit enters at exactly the right time and flips the entire emotional board. But that is not the cruelest twist. The cruelest twist is that she had already gotten used to being treated badly. That is the wound beneath the wound. She did not collapse at the wedding because she had practice. She knew how to sit still while people evaluated her. She knew how to keep her mouth soft while swallowing humiliation. She knew how to hear pity and translate it into "I am still not enough." That skill did not appear overnight. It was built over years. And that is the first life lesson, the one nobody likes because it hurts too much. A person can survive disrespect for so long that it starts to feel ordinary. That is what makes the ex-husband's return so disgusting. He does not just insult her, he walks into a room full of old pain and assumes the furniture is still in the same place. He thinks he can sit down inside her shame like it still belongs to him. That is what weak people do after betrayal. They do not just move on, they check whether the damage is still active. And let us be honest, he is not a difficult mystery. He is a very common man in a polished suit, the kind who wants the image of goodness without the labor of goodness, the kind who says he wasn't ready when responsibility arrives, then magically becomes ready once the status improves. He is not deep, he is convenient. That is why he is dangerous. Basic selfishness does more emotional damage than dramatic evil ever will. Then the dangerous man arrives, and here is where the script gets mean in the smartest possible way. The man from the criminal world is emotionally cleaner than the man from the respectable one. That is nasty writing. Great writing, but nasty. Because now the audience has to deal with an uncomfortable truth. Social legitimacy and moral worth are not the same thing. The man in the family photo can be rotten. The man with enemies can still be the first one to actually protect her. And what does he do first? He does not ask her to heal him. He does not dump his trauma on her. He does not make a big speech about destiny. He gives her something embarrassingly simple, a way out of public humiliation for one night. This is where the emotional trap snaps shut. Sometimes people fall in love not when they are rescued, but when they are finally relieved of carrying shame alone. That is why the dance matters, not because it is sexy. It is, sure, but that is not the important part. The important part is that for the first time all night, she is not being watched as a failure. She is being watched as a woman. That can destroy a person emotionally in the best and worst way. Because once someone feels the difference between being tolerated and being treasured, old relationships start looking like crime scenes. And now let the story pause again, because the daughter changes everything. Without the little girl, this is just a dramatic romance with organized crime seasoning. With the little girl, it becomes a moral test. The daughter is the truth detector in the story. Around her, all fake adults get exposed eventually. Men who only want power tend to treat children like interruptions. Men who want control use children as arguments. Men who actually love know that a child is not a prop. A child is a world. That is why the dangerous man wins emotionally. He does not just want the mother. He makes room for the child. He notices her habits. He protects her sleep. He speaks to her like she matters. He enters the father space not with entitlement, but with care. Second huge lesson. The right person does not merely love the part of someone that is easy to romance. He respects the part that is expensive to protect. And that brings us to the emotional knife twist. The mother is not scared only because his world is dangerous. She is scared because he is good with her daughter. That is a whole different terror. Adults can survive heartbreak. Mothers are terrified of misplacing trust around children. Once a child starts attaching, the stakes go nuclear. That is why the relationship stops being fantasy and becomes terrifyingly real. Now, to the best irony in the entire story, the fake relationship creates real danger, but it also exposes real love. The performance draws criminals, the lie attracts enemies. The convenient arrangement becomes emotionally inconvenient in the most absolute way possible. And that is a sneaky life lesson. Sometimes a false beginning leads to truth faster than an honest beginning ever could because people reveal themselves under pressure. Her ex revealed himself under pressure. Coward, opportunist, control addict. Her family revealed themselves under pressure. Conditional, class-obsessed, affectionate only after external validation. The criminal enemies revealed themselves under pressure, predatory, instrumental, cowardly enough to threaten a woman and a child for leverage. And she revealed herself under pressure, too. This is the part that matters most. She was not actually weak, she was exhausted. There is a huge difference. Weak people fold when the stakes rise. Exhausted people sometimes look passive until the line is crossed. Then they become terrifyingly clear. That is exactly what happens when she stands in the warehouse and says, in effect, no more. No more using homes as targets. No more threatening kids. No more turning fear into policy. That moment is the true rebirth of the character. Not the dress, not the dance, not the kiss, the moral line. Third major lesson. A person really finds her power when she stops asking, how do I survive this, and starts asking, what am I no longer willing to permit? And now for the final wound, revenge does not actually fix her life. Making the ex jealous feels good for 5 minutes. Watching the family panic is satisfying. Seeing people recalculate her worth because a powerful man chose her is darkly hilarious. But none of that heals her. What heals her is much quieter and much harder. A child sleeping peacefully in a safe room, a man remembering details she assumed nobody would remember, a hand at her back that steadies instead of controls, the gradual realization that love can feel like relief, not confusion. That is the final lesson, and it is brutal because it sounds simple. The opposite of betrayal is not revenge. It is peace. Not flashy peace, not perfect peace. Just the peace of no longer performing for the wrong audience. The peace of not begging old ghosts to admit they were wrong about her. The peace of being loved without being reduced. The peace of letting someone good step close enough to matter. So yes, the story has all the addictive ingredients. Wedding humiliation, rich family politics, fake relationship, mafia danger, child in the middle, ex-husband meltdown, Russian threats, emotional whiplash. But the real masterpiece is this. She thought her tragedy was being abandoned. It was not. Her real tragedy was almost building an entire life around people who only knew how to love her conditionally. Once that ended, everything changed. And the man who entered as a plot twist stayed because he was not really the twist at all. The twist was her. The woman everybody had written off turned out to be the strongest person in the room.